Hey, I'm Nate, Hollywood DM, and I am pushing forward with my, well, now it's not even backer kit. I changed from backer kit to Kickstarter. It's in the process of being evaluated. This crowdfunding thing is to obviously fix the art, which some of the stuff's AI based, and I drew over it, or just AI, and I need to replace all that with human grade art. I wanted to show some more elements of the book, specifically the new class, the Inventor. Normally, up till now, like if you do things like in D&D Beyond or whatever, you can only make subclasses. You can't make a full class ingrained in there, unfortunately. I tried to do it, and it's you have to dovetail off the Artificer. That being said, since I mentioned the Artificer, I don't really have a beef with them, other than I think thematically they need to be polished. So I've mentioned before, like they kind of feel like the people that created it were like, "Oh my God, video games are great. Team Fortress is awesome. What if there was a character in D&D that could do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, look, I guess." It just feels like almost like a pluck out of a video game and then try to integrate it into gameplay for tabletop role playing, and that doesn't work. The Inventor is my basically what I think is a good fix. That I posted something recently that mostly got likes. If you don't like them so much, why do you just don't use them? And I'm like, I mean, that's a good point. You can, but I mean, my opinion, pretty much the idea of everything in D&D is kind of like homebrew. There's like almost no other game that you do. Like I don't sit down at a chessboard and all of a sudden I'm kind of altering the rules of how the pieces move to fit the idea of a new game. Poker, yeah, you use cards and you can play different games, but for the most part, the cards themselves will always take the intrinsic value that is on the card. D&D is in constant flux, right? It's always being polished. Hence, we're on what iteration now, and it's spawned so many different things. It's the mother of role-playing games, of all other tabletop RPGs. Artificer, in my opinion, feels unpolished because it just hasn't had the same amount of time to go through public rigmarole and the Tumblr of people playing it and bitching about it or loving it and using it more. It hasn't done that. All the normal stuff like fighters, wizards, rogues, clerics, they've been from the beginning all the way till now, and they've been polished every time. They change every iteration of D&D. The Artificer is no different. So, like I mentioned in post this one guy, like back when first D&D came out, there was barbarians, and then there was also cavaliers. Cavaliers didn't make the cut. We already had paladins. Cavaliers were a great little dissect of that. The idea was someone was like, why do I have to be lawful good as a paladin? Anti-paladins weren't NPCs. But that slowly morphed, and over time, paladins became a little more nuanced. But for a brief time, there was cavaliers. You had to start lawful good, but then you could kind of switch and change. And they didn't make the cut. Cavaliers got barbarians, however, were kept. They were polished and then integrated, and now barbarians are a core class, right? Artificers are like in that to me. It reeks of video game-ness. It needs polish, refinement, and then a rebirth into some other, newer tome or whatnot. And not every DM likes them. I personally like playing them, to tell you the truth. So they're great, but I do feel at some points like that seems a little. You're trying to take something that's scientifically based, or at least the illusion of like, oh, they're a mechanic, they're a scientist, or saying like, oh, but no, they just think of magic as differently. They use magic differently, and I'm like, let's not use magic as a crutch, right? You've already got enough spellcasters. You've got the warlock, you've got the sorcerer, you've got the wizard, and then there's the hybrid casters or whatever. And you wanted to make something that was kind of like a fighter mage, of them being able to craft things and using magic. I'm like, I get it, but why not just say like this is a science-based class and they emulate spells based on the things that they make? The Inventor, I think, does that better than the Artificer, mostly because the Artificer can't be changed. It's in a book that I can't touch because copyright infringement. But at any rate, I think this is a pretty good fix. When you start your Inventor, you will get 2 cantrips and you will get 2 first level spells. As you go up, you can change your leveled spells, but your cantrips will always stay the same. You will get more as you go up in level, but you can't exchange them or alter them. And the reason why is that's your basis for scientific discovery. Your experiments all stem off of this basis of learning. Every time you level up, you can pick 2 more spells of spells you can level, and you can exchange one that you may have had, like, I've outgrown this, I'm going to adapt to something else. You start to utilize artisan tools as well as other types of tools, and at any time in the future, let's say you run across something that's broken or whatnot, you can kind of repair it. So making like a DC 10, and it varies with the idea of what the DM might step, but you can attempt 1 time per long rest per piece of machinery that you find. Even if it's very complex, you can try and repair it, and it will work until the next day. So the idea is you're just barely holding something together, and then it'll kind of fall apart again, and you got to kind of keep manipulating it. So you go to some place and there's like an old kind of a thing, you can just naturally understand the mechanics of whatever this machinery is. And this extends to your automat as well. So later on, if you have like an automat defender, which is basically like your companion, you can repair it every long rest. So as you bed down, you kind of tinker with your... You also get a power, it's called jury rig, which is somewhat similar to the idea of mages being able to like get back some spells. So you basically, once per day when you finish a short rest, you can expend spell slots, you can like recover some spell slots that have to be the combined level that is equal to or less than half your inventor level rounded up, and they can't be higher than 6th level. You also get the power which is called in a pinch right here. In a pinch is at 9th level, which is in a long once per long rest. The inventor can activate like small spark rock device and adapt something on the fly. So this is a full round action. You basically take your standard, your move, and your bonus all in one shot as you're feverishly trying to push together something, and you can replicate any spell of any class, 6th level or lower. Yeah, and it's basically, it uses your int to replicate this effect. But it's just once per long rest. So basically, in a pinch, you can create, like you can MacGyver something up real quick. And, oh my God, we need a banishment spell and we don't have it, or a heal. Like, we got to do heal, and there's no the cleric's down. In a pinch, you could rush up there and maybe even raise dead. So those are the 2 things that every inventor gets: jury rig and in a pinch. But basically, at 3rd level, you have to start to choose your sign of genius, how you go about doing your inventory stuff. So 2 different things. You can be a mad scientist or you can be an automat specialist. Boop. And the first one is a mad scientist. This is kind of the ones that, if I could take from the Artificer the alchemist and kind of maybe morph it together with the artillerist a little bit, although I've basically shoved a lot of the artillerist stuff away, mostly because it's not needed. Some of the good parts of being like a ranger or other things that shoot and fire, but then just like, oh, I'm going to make the mage do that. Well, the sorcerer already does a lot of grand damage at range. Why do we need to make an armored guy that can do the same thing? All right. Anyway, because that's the way it is in Team Fortress, and it's awesome. Mad Scientist has what's, instead of heavy armor, what they have is they find something often the wild, like in a burial mound or some like arcane place, like lost ruins deep within the mountain. There are some implements of like lost technology that can be found, and they find this, what they call like a rune object. They take this device, they adapt it, they put spark rock into it, and they start to do experiments on it. And the very first power they get is called a rune cantrip, which basically means you get, as a mad scientist, apart from your 2 starting cantrips, you get an extra one. This cantrip is basically, it can be supercharged. So you roll at the beginning of every day after you finish your long rest, you roll a d4. If you roll a 1, you have randomly adapted through this device, this runic device, a superpowered cantrip. So it activates at one category higher for its yield. So if it's a 1st level cantrip, it acts like a 5th level cantrip. If it's a 5th level cantrip, it acts like an 11th level cantrip. If it's an 11th level cantrip, it acts like a 17th level cantrip. And it does so for the rest of the day. You get at 3rd level, as you're kind of just blossoming as the mad scientist, you get what's called stroke of genius. And this is kind of the basis for a lot of your stuff. So you can use any skill as though you had proficiency with it a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. So the idea is that you just naturally decode how to do something. You just that smart, you know. Oh, yes, I get it. Eureka, you know. Also can once per long rest, so once a day, you can become proficient in any saving throw. So they start, I believe, with, instead of con, like Artificers get, you start with dexterity and intelligence as your saves. But once per day, if you were a mad scientist, you could, you know, oh my God, I'm going to get hit with poison. You know what? Today, this one, I'm going to be proficient with, you know, for Constitution for this one saving throw. Hopefully that'll help out. Finally, what you get for the stroke of genius is that you experiment with Spark Rock on a daily basis, and you're kind of like using beakers and solutions, and you roll basically an Arcana check at the beginning of your day. If you get a DC 15 or higher, you succeed. And what happens then is you basically roll on this table, which I don't even know if you can see right there. So in the DMG, there's basically 24 potions, but I took out some of the beefier ones, and you've got these 20 that you concoct. If you, however, sacrifice some of your hit die, and you can sacrifice hit die up to so you can sacrifice hit die up to proficiency modifier, and what it does is it lets you add or subtract 1 from this roll, so that gives you a more range of area. So even if you're, let's say you're got a proficiency modifier of 2, but you sacrifice 2 hit dice that you normally would use to heal yourself in a short rest, but instead now what it does is when you roll on the potion creation table, you've got a range of, like, I rolled a 13. Well, I can do 2 higher and 2 lower. I've got a small window of things I can choose. So you rolled a 10. 10 is a healing potion, right there. But instead, now I could choose gaseous form, growth, healing potion, or I could choose heroism or invisibility. I've got a range of things it could be. So as you go up in level, your choices, it's a broader spectrum of things that like, I want this. If you ever roll like a 20, Eureka, you can actually choose whatever you want out of the DMG, which of course that covers things like giant strength, greater invisibility, etherealness. So there's bits here that aren't in this list that if you get to Eureka, you roll a 20, that's like kind of a crit success. It'll allow you to get some of these really high beefy potions. And you can do this at 3rd level. So there's a chance that you could actually pop out some really awesome stuff. But there's randomness to it. Once you hit 6th level, you can improve equipment. So this kind of goes back to the idea of Artificer's infusions, but it was a little too powerful, I thought. And some of the infusions will allow you to kind of do things that are a little bit just beyond the pale, especially handing them out to players and they walk off and go adventure wherever, and it just, as long as it stays there, it's fine. I think the idea is like you're more of a scientist as like a mechanist and a scientist. Your things are not, they're not 100% formed in like once you've made it, it just exists forever. You know, there's well, what's the term? Planned obsolescence. That's it. Okay, so these things that you craft, they don't last forever and they need constant maintenance. Improve equipment at 6th level. You take about 10 minutes, so a little short rest. You make things, they become the magical. You can either do this to a weapon or a piece of armor. It gains the magical property. For a weapon, it gives you an extra D6 electrical or a D6 fire damage whenever they attack with it. For armor, it is a +1 rating to the armor class. But it also gets resistance to either electrical or fire. The reason why is because Spark Rock, when it blows up or kind of has its random, you know, effects that it does, it is a combination of electrical and fire. So that's right now at the basis, you've only been able to just utilize the intrinsic value that's in Spark Rock. Once you get to 9th level, you can tailor that a little bit more. So you've learned to upgrade its potency. Weapons then get a +1 to hit and damage. And you, +1 to hit, and then the extra damage is an extra 2d6, and you get to choose the damage type that it does. And then armor gains to +2 protection, and then gains a resistance of any kind of energy type. You know, basically every short rest, you're gonna have to kind of keep tinkering these things and making sure that the magic and the armor and the weapon kind of keeps going, because it's not meant to hold that energy. You're jury rigging it to do that. You get to do this a number of times based on your intelligence modifier. So a good inventor, about 4 times a day, 3 to 4 times a day, they can upgrade someone's weapons and equipment, and it's going to last from one short rest to the next, which is a lot. That's probably a couple of encounters. It's pretty good. Once you get to 10th level, then you start to get into some stuff that kind of helps you as a caster. So up until this point, you should be matching somewhere close to a mage. You'll kind of get some upper level spells, like their 5th level spells, maybe 1 back from them. But for the most part, it's pretty good. And you'll have a larger base of lower level spells to pull from. Plus, you've got some randomness of like, oh, I can kind of just pull any spell out of my ass, and do this once per day kind of thing where I can adapt to a situation, which a mage can't necessarily do. Well, you get what's called a mnemonic enhancer. That right there, this thingy, you have been able to store energy within your runic device. It's basically a more advanced runic device that you've got on your harness that allows you to store spell slots, so you have a personal spell storing item. It holds a maximum spell slots equal to your intelligence modifier to a no higher level than 5th. So you could, if you've got 20, hold 1 5th level spell within your runic device that's attached to your inventor's harness. And finally, you get, as your last bit, is called Science is My Business. Science is my business. I'm Julius Miller. That's if you know who that is, that's a deep cut. Basically, through your runic device and your honed intellect, are able to crack the spell preparation system from other casters. It doesn't always work quite right. So you basically do an intelligence check plus a proficiency modifier or proficiency bonus. Basically, it's Arcana check. And your DC is basically 20 plus. So it's got a sliding scale. Success means that you can choose a spell from the list and memorize it as a bonus spell. So you get these. Each point you get above 20, you get to memorize spells of whatever class you're choosing from at a higher level. So DC 20 is a 1st level spell. DC 21 is a 2nd level spell. DC 22 is a 3rd level spell, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 9th level. Really lucky and rolled a DC 30, you're like, yeah, I'll take True Resurrection from the cleric list, thanks. Delve into Druid, and you're like, oh, I can cast Creeping Doom now for this like one day, right? You have that spell saved up for that day. There is a negative, however. You can screw up. So what I want to kind of do with the Mad Scientist, there's a little bit of a give and take. The converse curve. So if you roll DC 19, you fail by 1, then you lose a spell slot that's 1st level. Then how bad you fail is the spell slot you lose. So you rolled a DC 18, you failed by 2, you now lose 2nd level spell slot. If you lose multiples, you just lose 1. So it's a little less of a sting for failure than it is for, the success, the boon of success, but not by much. You're still gambling, right? But at this level, once you get to 14th level, you should have a pretty good chance at getting to plus 20 for the most part. But if you fail, there's chances you could like, oh shit, I just lost a 6th level spell slot. Great. Science is not always it's not an exact science. That is the Mad Scientist. You can't go the other route. So the more tankier version, to kind of keep in line with the Artificer's ability to have armor and run around like Iron Man and shoot pew 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 stuff, I did what's called the Automat Specialist. So instead of the Inventor becoming the robot, you just tinker with a robot and you kind of make it do what you need it to do. Automat Defender, there's a base 1 in my game that's got like armor class 15 and 20 hit points. It's resistant to all types of damage that are like normal damage. Right from the get-go, so at 3rd level, an Automat Specialist has basically bolstered the framework of this thing. It has, much like an Iron Golem, it'll has like, or any Golem for that matter, it'll have immutable form. Its durability for armor rises. So its hit point total rises from 20 to 45, and its armor class value goes to 18, which is basically like plate mail armor. Its speed is reduced. Like, I don't like the idea. I think there's a robot already in D&D Beyond, or that WotC put out, but it's got like speed of like 40 or 30 or whatever. And I'm like, this is a heavy piece of machinery. It's pretty beefy. So its speed is 20, but it doesn't deal. Difficult terrain is not an issue for this clockwork construction, right? It can't hover for that point, but it's got like 8 legs or whatever, or pinwheels, wheels that kind of go over things, treads or whatever. So it deals well with all types of terrain. It's just slow and it's loud. However, the automat specialist can jump behind it, probably like on steps in the back, and kind of like look around it, and it gives him affords him 3/4 cover. He can also kind of hook in with his inventor's harness, to basically try and help him hang on, because usually they're nerds, right? They're scientists, so they're not the most athletic or acrobatic individuals usually, although they do have dexterity as one of their main things for skills. So acrobatics might be good. They've got a little bit of some nimbleness to them. They got to work in tight spaces when repairing their robot. They cast their spells through the robot, so things that like poison spray, they pull a lever and like something sprays out of the front of the robot, or they can shoot it from themselves. They do have a harness on, so if they unclack from the robot, they can basically like remotely activate it from the robot, like magic missile, and like this thing pops open on the back, and you see missiles shoot out or whatever to kind of make it fit your ideas for thematics. Your harness also works, so the idea is that there's some give and take there. However, you do need to be close to your robot, and if it ever goes down or gets destroyed, you can't cast spells, so you have to keep it up and running. It does not have an attack. It does have a movement, like I said, 20 feet, but it has what's called 3 programmed reactions. So every round it can, as long as you're within 5 feet of it, it can interpose itself in front of a melee attack. It won't block ranged attacks just yet, but it blocks melee attacks. So basically, you have to stay behind it, get 3/4 cover unless someone flanks you or comes around a different spot. But for the most part, if you're standing near it or by it, it can have arms or it can have shields in place of arms, and it basically will try and block hits for you. It only has 3 programmed reactions and then 1 movement. And it just kind of tries its best to defend you. Once you get to 6th level, the frame of the automat defender becomes magically resistant. So you've used so much spark rock into it that you get advantage on saving throws. And the inventor, if he's standing back on the defender and like hooked in, will also incur that advantage on saving throws as long as you're like nearby. At 10th level, you've actually messed with the protocols of this robot, and the clockwork defender now has what's called a defender protocol plus. It gets an attack. It uses your intellect as its base of attack power, so int plus prof modifier. It does a d6 plus 7 bludgeoning damage, but it also does a 1d8 electrical damage as well. On a successful hit, the target has to make a con save DC 12 or become stunned for a round. Take that, monks. You can forego this attack by using your bonus action as the inventor, and in doing so, you can basically cast a spell. So instead of using the automat's attack protocol now, you could stop the attack and power another spell through it. This allows you to double cast. So it does dip a little bit into the sorcerer. Obviously, you can't do 2-leveled spells as per the game, because only sorcerers can do that if they use sorcerer points. And, once per short rest, you can do this. So you basically use your bonus action, but instead of the attack, you press a couple buttons, pull a lever, and you can cast a second spell through your automat. Next ability that you have, and this is the final one, is you have tinkered with your automat defender so much that it becomes an automat juggernaut. It is huge, considered a large creature at that point. The hit points double from 45 to 90. Its armor class then jumps to 20. It gains numerous damage immunities, much like a little mini Iron Golem. There's still the chance that Radiant and Necrotic can mess it up, because those are what I consider to be otherworldly energies. I don't see how things can resist it, really. So it's mostly just elemental magics that it's resistant to. It has a bolstered melee attack, which is still obviously based off your int. The hit now is 2d8 plus 7 damage and does 2d8 electrical damage. Con save for getting hit by it is now DC 16 or be stunned for 1 round. The Inventor can now ride in a control seat. So much like the little picture I've got there. Look at that little guy. It obviously still affords you 3/4 cover from all around you, not just from like the front. You're not riding on the back. Now you're like in this thing. So think like a mech, right? A very clockworky sort of way. Gain all the benefits. You gain the resistance to magic. You gain the advantage on saving throws while you're in it. And once per short rest, you can activate a defense shield. So you just get another use of the shield spell once per short rest. You press a button, and this like bubble of energy pops up around your automat and deflects whatever's kind of coming at you. So I tried to do, if you look at the spell progression here, the +1 is only for the mad scientist. So you get cantrips, and as you go up in levels, you max out at 4 cantrips, and that's it. The mad scientist, however, will get 2 of its specialty cantrips that it can do as you get up in level. So once you hit up into level like 16, you get a second wild cantrip you can throw off the cuff. At that point, it's like barely a gimme. It's not really that big of a deal by that if you make it to that level of play. But what I did was I didn't want to overshadow the wizard. So right now the wizard basically gets, like, I think they get their second 6th level spell at roughly 15th level. Maybe it's 14th, somewhere in there. And I didn't want that to happen. So they also gained their like 7th level spell you get at 13th level as a wizard. I wanted the progression to be a little slower. You're behind the curve on that. You're trying to figure things out through scientific means. You don't quite get it exactly, but you start to follow up. So you will get access to 9th level spells, but only at 18th level. Wizards get it at 17th. You get your 8th level spell at 16th. Wizards get it at 15th. So there's some reduction in power gain there. To offset this, what you basically have is a larger base of spells you can do. So if you look at the wizard spell progression, wizards don't get 4 second and 3rd level spells. They get 3s. So you've got a broader spectrum of things you can do at lower levels. But the higher level spells, that's really the purview of someone that's tapped into the arcane, these supernatural forces that kind of spread across the astral plane and other dimensions and other planes of existence. They pull energies from the elemental plane or wherever. The spell list, crap. It's down here a bit. We're going through subclasses. I apologize. But down here a ways is, there it is. So this is the Inventor spell list. So right now you'll notice the cantrips are actually pretty like it. I need to add in a couple more. And I've added some. So there's a new spell, Scent, which means you can track by scent if you don't have it. There's another one called Climate Control. Did you realize in 5th edition they didn't port over Enduring Elements? Which I think that was I want to say that came out in 2nd edition. Got revamped in 3rd, and then they just ditched it in 4th, and it never came back in 5th as well. But it was basically, if you were in cold environments or hot environments, everything was like temperate for you. You didn't get jostled either way. You're like, oh, it's fine, it's great, Miami Beach, but different now. So I wanted to make a new spell, and it fits like you're in your little cockpit, so it's climate controlled. Adverse temperatures don't really mess with you too much. But then you'll notice as you go into their spell progression, it's meant to be not all damaging spells, utility spells. They do have a lot of dominate things, so imagine it shoots out little things that stick into creatures and they get shocked or whatever, and you're able to kind of like take over a creature, so dominate it, charm it, fear it, stuff like that. There's some benefits to that, but a lot of stuff is based off of the idea that it's more mechanical in nature or could be replicated through mechanical means. So once you get up into 9th level, they don't get Wish. Leaving that with the wizards. Wish is a wizard spell. You get weird. You get true polymorph. There's ways like you can kind of like alter your, you basically kind of alter your form, stuff like that. I would assume like if you tried to cast true polymorph on your your automat that doesn't work, right? They have a mutable form. But for a mad scientist, that would fit. Time stop fits. Shape change, once again. Prismatic wall, power word kill. There's some things here that could be imprisonment. You can imagine gate. Like these can be thought of as to being created by something that was mechanical in nature or scientifically in nature. I didn't want them to have access to everything. So a lot of shadow magic they don't get access to. Shadow magic or summoning demons and stuff like that. Although I think I did give them clone. Yeah, but you'll notice they don't get those other things that kind of pull from other dimensions. There's not a summon elemental. The dog's back. There's not a summon elemental. There's not summon demons. There's no Kako demon type thing. There's no gate. Although that gate might be applicable. But through their power, they could obviously pick from any spell list randomly once per day. So in a pinch, they can kind of do that. But that's to kind of show, like, I wanted to keep some spells just with sorcerers, just with wizards. This is more science-driven caster. And that is the Inventor. So hopefully you like it. I think it's a little bit more refined, and I think fits in theme better than an Artificer does. I didn't want it to be just like, I'm an artillerist. I just shoot at stuff and it blows up.
This is my boomstick!
Like, I mean, I get it, but that's what sorcerers do too. And they have more, there's no reason to just double down and triple down off of this one aspect of a thing. And why would a scientist want to do just that? Like, the skunk works. I made the bomb. It's like Oppenheimer, but like on steroids. Hopefully you'll be able to check out the Kickstarter soon. I get approved today. I had to transfer everything over from BackerKit. They don't let you do anything with AI. So even though I'm trying to change out my picks from AI to human grade art, you still can't run a campaign based off of that. They don't want anything to do with AI. So for you in the future, if you're looking to change out your artwork in BackerKit, don't even bother. They will not allow you to do it. So I had to switch over to Kickstarter, which does allow you to do it because you have to be upfront about it, which I am. That's my goal, is to change out stuff and hire human artists to do all the stuff, all the artwork, which is crazy because BackerKit backs Kickstarter. So in a roundabout way, they do approve it, but that's not my call. They can make their company do whatever they want their company to do. So there we go. Hurdled.